by David Doyle forms the basis of our discussion this afternoon. And we're now joined by Madam Amina Garib Fakim, who is a biodiversity expert and famous researcher, as well as the former president for Mauritius. Good afternoon, Madam. Great to have you once again on the show.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Great. Now, I know I asked this question a few weeks ago, but I'd like to start with it. What the response has been to this spill, particularly by the government?
You mean for the spill?
Yes.
As we speak, I think there is a unanimity among all the stakeholders that we still haven't had clarity onto what happened so far. Right? It's over a month since there has been this oil spill, and you have rightly said in the intro to this conversation that there has been a march, a civilian march on Saturday in Port Louis. And I think this civilian march, for us, it's the very first time that we have seen the number of people who have taken to the street, because I think everybody wants answers. There has not been clarity. We still don't know what happened officially. And, when you don't get proper information, this is the right recipe for conspiracy theories to write. This is not what we want. But one thing that we have seen is that we have seen the first victims. And the first victims have been already the dolphins and the porpoise have started washing up the shores. And that is something we are not proud of, and this is something we deplore, because I think these have been innocent victims. We have invaded their homes and we have destroyed their lives.
Indeed, and you mentioned the protests, and I want to talk more about them. And of course, we know that the protests are there to demand answers following the death of at least the 40 dolphins that you mentioned there, Madam. But what more do these protests hope to achieve, and by when?
I think this dolphin, the death of dolphin, has just been a drop, in the ocean of complaints and qualms that people have. And I think when they were marching, they were asking questions on governance issues. They were asking questions on corruption issues. They were asking questions on, when are we going to see our institutions function again as they should? And so this march, I think, is symptomatic of many things happening here. And so we are all asking questions, and we are hoping that those at the helm will start answering. And I think the very first question, that very first answers we want is what happened to these dolphins?
Indeed, and I'm glad you've raised it. Who takes the blame for this?
Well, so far, I don't think we want to go into blame game just yet. We want answers. And after that, we can start apportioning blame. But right now, we want to know what's killed this dolphin. You mentioned 2 autopsies, but this morning, we just read that there are over 40 of these mammals that have washed our shores. We want autopsy to be done, as you have said. We want clarity. We want answers. And we want to know as well much more on the question that the public has been asking. What happened over the first 12 days when this ship wrecked on our reef and the oil started spilling 12 days after? Why did we allow this to happen? Why did we not take remedial measures then? Because if this had been done with more promptitude, we wouldn't be here talking about this today. And of course, we still don't know the full impact of this oil spill, because we're still closed, the airspace is still closed, but we know already that the image of Mauritius as a pristine destination, at least for that part of Mauritius, because the rest of Mauritius is okay, but that part, unfortunately, is hit the headlines on Saturday, and it is not good for our image at all.
Indeed. Madam Amina, let's talk about the fear of a second major oil spill, because I understand that overnight on Monday, 31st August, that was actually yesterday, there's been a major operation which is underway in Mauritius as a barge carrying oil from the stricken Japanese iron ore vessel collided with a tugboat pulling it. Talk to us more about that.
We have just heard that, in fact, this was a statement from the Prime Minister. He said that the barge was not carrying oil, and there has been a collision between the barge and the tugboat. But what has happened, unfortunately, we have seen loss of lives, this time human lives. 2 persons have died, 2 have been reported missing, and 4 have been rescued. So from what the Prime Minister has said, there is no oil spill this time, but unfortunately we have lost human lives this time.
So what does this mean now, especially because now you're telling us that we've moved from the dolphins to now losing human lives? How do we avoid, prevent a third occurrence?
Well, that's a good question for which I don't have the answer. I hope that there will be no more bad news, because I think for the past 2 weeks or more, we have been riddled with bad news. And it is none of our making, partly, yes, because the decisions have been taken promptly. And so I think what the international community, the scientific community, and the population in Mauritius, there are many questions they're asking. For example, where has the first part of this ship been sunk? What's going to be the impact on wildlife? Because those who have decided to sink this ship, have they adhered to international law? All these questions are being asked, and we're going to be demanding answers.
Indeed. Let's compare this oil spill with others. For instance, some of the world's largest oil spills say that of the Persian Gulf War oil spill in 1991. There's been the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. In 2016, another one happened at the United States. Let's compare this spill in Mauritius with others that have happened before, the effect, and most especially how these spills have been handled.
All these spills, I think each one of them is unique, because we are talking about our very first oil spill. And this oil spill has taken place in one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. We are unique from that point of view, so I don't think we can compare ourselves to what happened in the Gulf of Mexico, for example. And for us, it's a major disaster. And for us, so many days after it's happened, we're still begging for answers. We are not getting answers. And we still don't know when the proper operation of cleanup will start, because we still haven't had this visibility just yet. And also, in terms of preparedness, again, we can't compare this with other parts of the world, because many of these countries, many of these countries have very strong institutions that can really run the course, deploy the scientists, have the weight financial to be able to deploy immediately. We are still in the early days. We still don't know when the polluters are going to pay. We still don't know exactly when the regulators are going to pull their weight behind what has happened here. So there are so many things, and right now, we're still waiting, and it's no good, because if we want to get compensation, we'll have to start doing the baseline work. We'll have to start collecting the samples. We need training of the people so that they can be aware of the protocol for collection. Because if this is not done properly, of course, we all know that the evidence which we'll produce will not stand the scrutiny of a court of law. So we are wasting time. We are dabbling into the unknown. We are dabbling into, I'm not going to say amateurism, but I think it comes very close to this. But we need to move very fast. We need to move very fast with the science, at least, so that we collect the samples. We get to know also, we get answers from where this ship has been sunk, because this will give us an idea of how the assessment can be made in terms of, weighing in terms of the resources. So we're still very much in the dark, unfortunately.
Madam Amina, allow me to ask you this question. In your capacity as a biodiversity expert and famous researcher, and most importantly, as the former president for Mauritius, what could you have done differently?
Well, I wish I could have been solicited more and done more. Unfortunately, we're not there. I'm trying my best within the network I have to raise this awareness, and thank you again for hosting me to speak about this. And I'm just hoping that, we'll make people see some sense into the urgency of the matter. And as we speak, that's all I can do right now. So we are not getting the operators to respond fast enough, because we need to set up an entire communication effort. We need to actually get the best communicators in the world, because communication matters. And of course, we all know that the shipping industry has to compensate. How much they're going to compensate, what techniques, what equipment they're going to put at our disposal, so that we can monitor in the long term. I mean, this is the awareness I'm trying to bring to the table, because we are not out of the woods. We will not be out of the woods for many years. to come. So we're just hoping that our voices will be heard so that the resources are put to our disposal so that we can really make a difference to this issue here.
Before we wrap up, let's talk about what next now after this. We are here, it's a month later, a month on from when the spill happened, and I know we've slightly touched on what we can do to avoid future spills, but what next? We are now even seeing the protests, and you talked about the latest occurrence where we actually lost 2 people, if I'm not wrong, Madam Amina. Talk to us about that.
Yes, we are lost. Yes. You know, the urgency is to do at least the preliminary cleanup. Because we have been speaking to, we have been hearing rather, the voices of those who have been very, very badly impacted. The fishermen, yesterday I saw a very emotional documentary of the livelihoods of these people that have been destroyed because they used to depend on fishing for their livelihoods. And all of a sudden that's gone. And they do not see any clarity. So I think the priority of priorities would be how to come to their support, to their help. How do we put money in their hands? And this is where we make a plea, because we need to help them. We need to make sure that the kids manage to go to school when the schools open, so that they have the resources. So to help those people operating in the informal sector, and then of course to engage in the faster cleanup operation. And beyond the cleanup operation, what do we do with all the booms, with all the oil which we are collecting at our level? Because some of the tugboats and the ships and the barges will be pumping eventually from of course wherever there is. But in terms of the finer cleanup operation, we need to move very fast. And this is the plea that we're making to those hearing us. But this is the priority of all priorities, is to help those who are vulnerable.
Okay, let's now get your closing remarks, because I'm hoping that when we speak with you again for the 3rd time, we'll be having at least some good news, madam.
Of course, that's what we're all hoping for.
Yes, let's get your closing remarks.
Thank you again. And we just, again, we hope, we really hope that the operators, the shipping industry responds to our question. And we hope that there is a better awareness being created of the impact of the shipping industry on such precious ecosystems in the world. And as a small island developing state, I call for a wake-up call with all these small islands, because they are as vulnerable as we are. And we are, as I say, excuse the pun, we are at sea right now in terms of knowing what the future holds. So let us make this call. Now that we are going towards the United Nations General Assembly, we are making a call that there is more preparedness for small island state, but more importantly, that the shipping industry, really takes this very seriously, because they are a very, very big sector. And of course, we are operating in a world now where might is right. It shouldn't be the case, but we are hoping that there is a wake-up call, because we are destroying our precious planet. And the sea space, the unregulated sea space, which is of course outside jurisdiction, these are the places which are most vulnerable. But here, we're not talking about the international water space. We're talking about our own territorial waters, which has been impacted. So please, come, let us own up to this tragedy.
Indeed. Always a pleasure having you on the show, Madam Amina Gurib Fakim. She is a biodiversity expert and famous researcher, as well as the former president of Mauritius. Once again, thank you so much, Madam. Let's move on. The United Nations